Good early Sunday morning, everybody. Meteorologist Casey Cloud back here in the Weather Center 424. So we do have a new severe thunderstorm warning in play now for parts of Dixie and Taylor counties until 5:15 this morning. So some stronger winds possible here at the coast, especially as we're looking toward areas there. As we zoom on in a little bit tighter, you can see there around Deckle Beach, also over towards Steenhatchee here, watching some stronger winds possibly as we go over under the hood now on our storm relative velocity mode. You can kind of see what we're talking about here, but we're on the edge of the radar, kind of just issuing this warning because we were seeing a really impressive signature out there in the Gulf of Mexico earlier on in the timeline here. I know it was definitely something that was noteworthy, but we lost that energy here. So not having to go with a tornado warning in the National Weather Service in Tallahassee, but a severe thunderstorm warning here until 5:15 this morning. I'm going to go ahead and get our radar scope computer up here to give you guys another vantage point of this storm system, give you guys an idea of what's happening here on this live weather update again. Severe thunderstorm warning in play for parts of Dixie County, also parts of Taylor County here until 5:15 this morning. So here's that other vantage point now. You can see what's happening here. I know we have the rain toward Stark even. I'm hearing on the roof about a tenth of an inch or so around Stark. Not really picking up as much as it will later on though. But the zero threat's pretty low off towards Stark here. That's the good news. Not technically under any type of formal risk, so that's the good news. But there is a risk here at the coast. So gotta be watching here as we're looking toward again parts of Dixie and parts of Taylor counties here this morning. A severe thunderstorm warning in play. We're watching those winds here. We've seen some areas of rotation, but again, the energy's lacking here. I'll go ahead and look at this warning. You can kind of see it on your screen, but in fact, let me go ahead and zoom out. We'll kind of show you here. You see some of that rain up toward Mayo, but they're not under the warning. But you can see Salem there under this warning here as well. So this warning for northwestern Dixie and southeastern Taylor counties until 5:15 a.m. At 4:14. Doppler radar indicated a line of severe thunderstorms capable of producing damaging wind gusts in excess of 60 miles an hour. These storms located along a line extending from 19 miles southwest of Perry to 16 miles there west of Steenhatchee to 21 miles west of Horseshoe Point, moving northeast at 25 miles an hour. So that movement there could also lead to some minor flooding there as well as some of this heavier rainfall in this area. So something to watch for. Had a higher wind report earlier there, 40 miles an hour, and that's indicative of really that's the nature of things right now with the higher winds above. Some of those are going to be getting down toward the surface here and causing some problems even outside of the storms. Wind advisories in play for our region. Coastal flood warnings in play here just because of the overall setup under the pressure down to about 1,006 millibars where I'm at here east of Stark now. So I'm really seeing that drop as I'll go ahead and come back on camera now. Again, severe thunderstorm warning in play. We kind of debated whether to cut in for this or not, but just because of the overall storm system, I thought we would come on generally, maybe not cutting in for stuff in a more rural area, but at the middle of the night, and you might hear that wind just roaring out there, and you want to know what's happening. And we do have a severe thunderstorm warning, could have some damage here. And again, the tornado threat doesn't look too high with this because we're in that reduced, if not any instability at all scenario right now as we get toward parts of Taylor and Dixie. I'm going to go over to another mode we have. We've been showing this to you guys here throughout the night. We had our tornado warning coverage earlier on, and you can see the temperatures in the 50s, 57 toward Keystone. I'm at 58 right now, just east of Stark. So there's temperatures here kind of on the cooler side for severe weather, but you see warmer temperature to the south. And that's what we're expecting the threat here as we're looking, especially as we look later on. This will be the area after 7 a.m. Now, before 7 a.m., coastal areas definitely be watching things, but after 7 a.m., you see that threat here from about, it looks like Gainesville and Palatka, southward St. Augustine in this too, though. Even parts of Levy and Marion counties as well, so we'll be watching for that, obviously. But you can kind of see this area here of energy further down, and that's going to be kind of something to watch because this situation here could be a little bit worse toward the south with the higher energy values because of the shear in place. Granted, you're going to be further away from the low pressure, but you have more energy here to work with, so could have a little bit more of a severe threat down south here towards central Florida later on. We've seen this pattern before, so just want to be on guard for that as we're watching this situation here later on this morning, maybe on just the edge of our area to outside of our viewing area, but You can see what we're talking about with quite a bit of lightning throwing up some areas of rotation, and this is in a more favorable spot here based on the energy. If the energy carries in here, after be watching towards some of these coastal areas here. You see Newport Richie maybe later on, something those folks will have to watch. But right now in our area, the reason we are on this morning is for a severe thunderstorm warning until 5:15 a.m. It's a pretty small warning here. Probably won't stay on the whole time of this warning. Obviously, if a tornado warning gets issued, though, we'll be going ahead and ramping up that coverage. But that's a bit thunderstorm warning there around Deckle Beach, Salem. They're under this as well. So Deckle Beach there getting in some of this wind. An interesting scenario. I know the wind looked a little displaced here, but I think it's because we're looking higher up, because I know during our tropical storm last year, Elsa, we had a situation here where things were a little harder to read because we're looking up higher on the radar. I know I'm using the Tallahassee radar right now. Let me go ahead, if we can, let me go ahead and pop up another viewpoint. We'll go to our radar scope computer once again here. Just bear with me. I think I might even go to a Cedar Key camera here as well in a moment. So that'll be something to kind of go to here too. But there's a little bit of heavier accent right now, not too far away. It looks like from Steinhatchee. So if you're in Steinhatchee, make sure you're away from those windows. You're probably already inside with the rain and it being 4:30 on a Sunday morning. But just make sure you're careful. If you have some trees nearby, make sure you're not around those. If you're by a tree, maybe by your windows, what I'm talking about in bed, you want to make sure you get a little bit more to a safer spot, interior room, something like that, if you can, because you could knock down some trees there around Steinhatchee this morning. I know the wind velocities are hard to see right now, but just looking at the overall radar, I would think this is some stronger wind moving in right now toward the Steinhatchee area over the next little bit. So we're going to have to be kind of mindful of that here. You can kind of see some heavier rain toward the north. And let's go ahead and switch radars while we're on radar scope right now. We'll go ahead and switch on over. You see some of this lighter rain around Stark and Hampton. You might be hearing that rain on the roof and wondering what's going on here this morning on this Sunday morning, holiday weekend. And right now things look relatively tame here in terms of that severe threat towards Stark. It's not zero, I don't think, but it is very low, not formally under a risk. As I talked about, that risk down toward the south here. We'll be continuing to watch things. In fact, let me go ahead and put that risk area. I can do it on here as well. So let me go ahead and pull that on up. Here are different layers. We'll go ahead and pull that risk area on the map so you guys have an idea of exactly what is going on here. You kind of see our tornado risk just to the south of areas here around Gainesville, for instance, getting down into toward the Gulf of Mexico. So this is after 7 a.m. granted, but you can kind of see me tracing this. I'm not doing the best job, but it might be kind of hard to see that green line. So you can kind of see this is where our threat will be after 7 a.m. or so, pretty much south of this line here. That's where our instability values should be high enough to coincide with those higher shear values that I've continued to talk about. Those shear values are pretty impressive, but the energy values have really been lacking. But down there, we might have enough of a mix here as we're looking ahead. But right now, we do have enough of the parameters in play to produce maybe some stronger winds, not necessarily rotating winds, because the energy values just aren't there for that type of scenario down toward the surface. But we're going to continue to watch things. You saw the rain off towards Stark. We're up to about 0.13 there on the gauge. So I'm going to continue to be watching that. Let me go ahead and pop myself back on camera here. We're at 4:33 on this Sunday. I hope if you're up right now, you're staying safe, not really seeing the lightning with this. And that's indicative of things not really being surface-based there with the energy as much up toward the north, but we do have some stronger winds. Let me go ahead and switch on over toward our other mode right now. You see some gusts here, 21 in Dixie, 24 in Taylor, 18 in Swanee. These are outside of the storms generally, 15 off toward the Keystone area. And something to watch, I know that Tampa Bay Buccaneers game might not be up because I might be asleep taking a nap at that point after our severe threat starts to dwindle here, but down toward Tampa, we do have that game going on in the NFL playoffs. Philadelphia at Tampa, the 7 versus the 2, defending Super Bowl champions there at Raymond James Stadium. In that game, the rain's to be kind of moving on out of that point, the storminess, but we'll have some pretty strong winds that could impact the kicking game. So something you're maybe watching down there toward West Central Florida for later on this afternoon on Fox. But we did just get a report in a 40-mile-an-hour wind now, Horseshoe Point in Dixie County, so not the severe criteria, but still could cause some minor power outages Generally, though, you are seeing winds here in that range this morning, even outside of some thunderstorm accents. So, and granted, I'm not even seeing lightning, so don't know if we should call that thunderstorm accent. Really, we do have to the south, though, some lightning, so these storms could be a little stronger. We're not going to get a good velocity scan. Levy is notoriously in a bad spot here on the radar, so got to bear that in mind. We've got to be a little careful around there. If you hear something outside in Levy County that sounds a little bit off, just go ahead and get ready to, and probably go in toward that interior room away from those windows, because it'll be harder to issue a warning in that area because the radar scans are just so high up there in toward that area around Cedar Key. But speaking of Cedar Key right now, let's go ahead and pop up the camera. We do have that there, and you can kind of see some of that rain on the lens there toward Levy County this morning as you're looking outside, giving you that visual. You might have headed over there for your holiday weekend there, that 3-day weekend, and things probably waking you up about now with some of that rain in the picture there, picking on up there toward that area, and those winds picking up some. We'll have to see what the office in Tampa, Ruskin, does to see if they issue some type of warning for this area. It's really hard, though, to see what's happening in the lower levels here on those Doppler radar scans. That's something to bear in mind. But we do have coastal flood warnings in play as well. Those are continuing, just getting the latest updates. We have that issue as well. So that's something you got to be mindful of. It's kind of like, not exactly, we don't want to compare them in the same way, but kind of like storm surge here in some ways here in this situation because of that coastal inundation. So got to be careful here. I mean, you get these type of warnings in a tropical storm sometimes when you're not in the direct line of fire from that higher storm surge threat. I can't issue a storm surge warning here because it's in the tropical system, but you kind of get my drift here. We do have to be mindful as those levels do go up some here in toward this region on this Sunday morning. So those water levels, something to watch. You got to be careful there. I know talking about water levels off toward the west coast because of those tsunami advisory conditions, but also here because of this winter storm, the lower pressure, the overall setup, producing some higher inundation values in some spots here. I know not to this level, but the storm of the century in '93, we had bad problems there along the west coast of Florida. That was a much stronger system, much stronger than this, but still the general idea here goes in that we do have this fifth threat toward the south, we had the winter storm part toward the north, and we had this extreme flooding. Again, this does not compare, but my point is the idea of it does in the meteorology world. But again, we will be here in the Weather Center watching things. I know off toward Lafayette County, north of Mayo. You can see some wind enhancement here. Maybe some of it's trying to get down to the surface. It's hard to say. So again, maybe hearing some gusts that are a little bit stronger here this morning. We're going to go ahead and zoom back on out now. Again, watching things. I know I had a temperature up on some of our other modes. And in fact, let me see if I can do this real quick. I can adjust this here on the fly potentially so you guys get an idea of exactly what's going on. I do have a way to pull in the Tampa radar here, so let me go ahead and show you guys that. Right now I have it up without having to actually switch. We can put this behind me right now on this mode, so you have to watch because the instability, excuse me, it's 4:30 on a Sunday, I apologize, but those instability values are higher down here, and the rotation is really showing up on this cell, for instance, toward the west of Pasco / Pinellas counties right now, probably headed more toward Pasco or Hernando, something like that. I can't guarantee a direction at this point, but that's going to be maybe a couple hours out. So this could be a threat. I mean, these storms are really rotating. We had some of this accent earlier on that storminess moving in toward Dixie and Taylor, but the thing is the energy values are higher down here, so more likely to produce maybe a tornado down here along the west central Florida coastline this morning. So got to be mindful of this if you have relatives along this area. I know it's 4:30 on a Sunday morning, but make sure you're keeping an eye on it. Hopefully they're keeping an eye on it, having those ways to get those alerts like we've been talking about here. I just want people to be protected. As those energy values here, I'll be able to help things get down to the surface potentially, and the shear's there. So could have a tornado that gets a little bit stronger than you would like here if things come together the wrong way in an isolated scenario. So again, I just have to be kind of watching that. In our area, the temperature's a little on the cool side for that, but again, just watching things carefully. Let's go ahead and go up here. It looks like they just canceled that severe thunderstorm warning, so that's the good news, folks. So we'll wrap our coverage here soon, but while I'm on, maybe waking you up with that notification on Facebook or YouTube, I do want to just touch on some other things that are going on here with the situation. I've been noting on our H4R model, maybe some more snow trying to come into the picture here, even into towards southern Alabama at least. Maybe not necessarily getting those accumulation values up there too high, but just seeing some of that flurry action. So might end up seeing that there later on this morning. Montgomery, Troy, Dothan possibly. It's looking like a higher chance of that happening at this point, as we've actually seen over the Ward areas there in Mississippi. There's a report of over 4 inches of snow here north of Jackson, Mississippi this morning. So things really ramping up. And as a pull over a regular radar, we had some pretty bright banding showing up earlier here on our radar, indicative of higher snowfall rates here in central Mississippi. So that's telling a story. I mean, even now you can see the brighter whites indicative of some stronger snow bands showing on up here central Mississippi this morning. So not necessarily accustomed to this here, but it's pretty hit and miss is what I've seen on Twitter and just within the radar echoes here. So you can see up here toward Greenville and South Carolina already an inch of snow being measured. This is toward, looks like Spartanburg County at the DSP airport there. So getting that report in, and these numbers are really going to go up. I know Asheville going to be seeing these numbers going up here. We could have a foot, give or take. Western North Carolina, winter storm warning there. Charlotte, you're under that threat as well there in Mecklenburg County. So got to be watching. And then Davidson County around Nashville there. Watching the situation here carefully toward that region. The snow starting to come in, still rain on some of these observations, but Memphis getting snow. An inch reported there so by a National Weather Service employee there in Shelby County. So this winter storm, I mean, we had the severe side, that severe thunderstorm warning we've been on for the last little bit, but also a winter weather side to this here as well. We've had a bunch of snow. A site there in northern Arkansas, a elevated spot, picked up a foot of snow. So definitely a big national story here. And then just kind of zooming back out, we're going to have to watch this thread up toward West Virginia, up toward Pennsylvania, New York, maybe even eastern Ohio there. Getting into some of this Kentucky, you kind of get the idea. This winter storm packing a punch here for some of these different areas. Got to be mindful of what can happen. This cool air coming in. I know Monday morning, not as much, but Tuesday morning, definitely going to have to be watching out for a freeze here, folks. So be ready. Could be the coldest temperatures here that we've seen all winter long as we're looking towards dark Jacksonville and Gainesville. So be advised, we could have a freeze warning here Tuesday morning. Tallahassee not necessarily issuing those, but Jacksonville office would as we're looking towards some of the different counties. So it's because Tallahassee's already seen some of that, but Jacksonville hadn't actually had a freeze yet. Crazy to think about. We've had a few freezes where I'm at here on my sensor, but not that many. I haven't gotten the 20s yet, I don't believe here. Yeah, I know last winter we got down in the lower 20s there as we were looking, low to mid 20s there a couple mornings late December. So that was back there in 2020 at this point, as we're in 2022 obviously. But let's go ahead, look here. Dew point values higher to the south as well. So we got to be careful because the sun always, at least trying to come out. I don't know how much we'll actually get down here, but the instability values here into play. The shear values could have some severe weather developing in central and southern Florida. Still not a zero threat even. It's a non-zero threat here, even in towards some of our area. South of I-10 is non-zero. I think north of I-10 is pretty much zero, but could still have some stronger winds at times that could knock out power theoretically. And could definitely happen in some of these different spots, but we'll just be watching things here. I know, of course, we're keeping everybody advised on this situation. Let me go ahead now and pop on up our graphics here. I'm going to pop this on right now. We're at 4:43 on this Sunday morning. Again, this holiday weekend, folks. Keeping an eye on everything going on. Let's go ahead now and say that covered area. Of course, we had that tornado warning in Franklin County earlier. Let's try that again. I apologize. I was talking about one of these spots earlier with a high wind gust, but I know we're talking about Dog Island. Honestly, not that familiar with it, but it looks like we did have a tornado above there, a water spout above there, in toward that area. I had a debris signature, or at least maybe a water, if not pieces of something showing up within the radar algorithms there around 12:25 this morning. So that was definitely something to note there in that area. Getting that so on up here in this situation as I go ahead now, punch away the graphics and then come back on over. I know we're getting some of that wintry weather up toward Athens. They just had that celebration there yesterday. It's still all rain and snowing right now, but we have a camera we can go to. I still have this in here from the other day talking about that National Championship celebration. Looking out here, it's going to be really hard for me to make it out, but we're going to be watching this because it'll be turning into that wintry precipitation here eventually in Clark County, Georgia. We have that threat out there for sure for those folks. So, going to be watching things. Let's go ahead. I generally don't like to spend this much time on other area threats, but since that warning expired, the threats are quite a bit bigger in terms of that winter storm up toward the north, obviously, and even toward the south here. I'm a little bit on edge just watching some of these storms down toward west central Florida because people could get caught off guard here, folks. We have some pretty strong rotation west of Newport Richey, Tarpon Springs. In fact, let me see here. We're going to go ahead and switch on over a couple things in our system for you guys. Let me go back on over toward radar scope here. We probably won't necessarily be on for if we get something to emerge here down toward central Florida unless it's really nasty looking. But again, we're watching this stuff in North Florida. You see some of that rain here coming on in. You can go to cloudweather.com/radar for an active look at things. When I'm not on the air here, you can see exactly where things are. Get an idea of how things are emerging here on this Sunday morning. I know watching things toward the south. If you have relatives down there, you can watch that radar and probably won't necessarily pop on for anything. If something looks pretty nasty, try to retweet it or tweet about it here. Just kind of play it by ear, depending on the level of severity down there, or if storms actually go severe. Sometimes I think they will, and then the parameters just don't come together because we do have higher instability values in the Gulf than we'll have over land here, it looks like. So it's not something that's set in stone down there, but the threat is higher down toward the south than it is more in our viewing area, I do believe. So let me go ahead now and switch you guys back on over. That's just one of our looks here. I have another thing. We just got a marine warning here, and I can put a storm motion track. I want to get a track on this. I know it's going to change some, but you're talking about water spouts and gusts 34 knots or greater here. That threat continuing until about 6:45 this morning off the coast. The one that really stands out, I'm going to put a track on that one right now. It's actually tracking it further to the north than I would have thought, so could still be something to watch here for some of our area, possibly. I'm going to retract this here as getting some information here in the chat. So let me just kind of see exactly what's going on. I definitely think this is heading more east than what this is showing. So let me see if there's a way I can manipulate this to get us a better track here on what's going on. It's not really giving me the best one, but what I'm trying to do here is give you guys an idea of what could happen with a storm toward the south. So we'll try this. I think it's going to go south of this though, but it could go north of where I was thinking. It's tricky in these situations when you're in the middle of the water trying to track things, especially down here to the south. But let's go ahead and go to our analyst computer now. Let's go ahead and go down here. This is tracking it more toward Homosassa Springs there in Citrus County, but I would think probably maybe more. We talked about Pasco County, maybe more toward Hernando County here this morning. So we'll just have to be kind of watching this situation carefully here. And there's another thing I can do. We have a way we can just trace these rotations here on our rotation tracker. So I might be able to eyeball this honestly better than doing a track based on the actual warning. So this might work pretty well in this situation here. We'll go ahead and look at some products behind the scenes. Again, watching things very carefully here. Gonna check my last hour. I just want to make sure I can give you guys a heads up. And looking at this behind the scenes, it looks like things will be maybe more Hernando County, but everybody's got to stay weather aware. Things can change so rapidly here, folks. Pointing out counties where we think it could happen, but really West Central Florida needs to stay weather aware this morning. Even our area, obviously, too, but just right now, and this again could change, but right now I do believe the threat is higher down toward the south based on its instability values. So let me go ahead now and switch this back on over. You see what we're talking about, over 1,000 joules per kilogram. I know we're getting this science pretty deep, but that's the instability. And then we have that mix in here with those rotational parameters, those shear values. And that can be problematic here, folks. Granted, up here we're only talking about 400 or 500 joules per kilogram, but if some of that gets kind of in towards some of these coastal areas, we could have a tornado coming ashore, waterspout coming ashore, and then obviously becoming that tornado. So again, just gotta be really careful here. West Central Florida, I'm kind of concerned, maybe just south of our area, but it could clip our area with this threat, depending on how things ultimately track. The threat up to the north looks less, but it's not zero. As we go ahead and zoom out, then we're getting some new information. The National Weather Service in Mobile now talking about some different things here. So let me go ahead and pull on our winter mode once again. They're saying that they're checking in. Confidence is growing for at least some rain snow to potentially mix there, and talking about potentially brief periods of all snow alone and north of Highway 84 this morning. Reports from Mississippi have already seen a band there moving along in north of I-20 with light accumulations on grassy surfaces as far east as Meridian, and this band may clip northern Choctaw County over the next few hours. And more showers could move further south there during the morning hours. Right now, impacts are not expected, but for northern Wayne, Clark, Choctaw, and Wilcox counties, some light dusting could be possible in those elevated surfaces, and wet roads may need to be watched closely for a slushy nature to develop, and anything that does fall will disappear quickly, and there are no concerns as the temperatures do drop Sunday night here, as we've seen on some of our different tools. And then you can go ahead and see here the wind's already coming from the west here behind things, usshering that cooler air. But as we look here, you can kind of see the winds coming in more from the south-southeast here as we're looking toward north central Florida here today. So we got the winter storm. Maybe some of you getting up very early on a Sunday morning just joining me. So I'm going to stick with it for a few more minutes and then wrap it up since that warning did get dropped. That's the big news here as of the moment. That warning did get dropped for Dixie County, for Taylor County. That's the very good news, obviously. As we go ahead now and switch on over, and this is an area the Storm Prediction Center really watching for some of that snow, that purplish area that they've circled here on the map. You can kind of see it from about Athens through Greenville, Clemson area there, Charlotte, Asheville's in here too. Even, I mean, we're looking almost up to Roanoke. You have Greensboro, and that's a site that's hosted the ACC basketball tournament a bunch over the years, and I believe still home to the league office there. But you kind of get the idea here. We have that winter weather coming in play. All those winter storm warnings can have some power outages as well, ramping on up. So we have to be aware of that potential. Those relatives up there, hopefully they've been charging up those devices, because things are going to become a little rougher on them as we're looking ahead in toward the timeline here. Let me go ahead now and check some more things. We have our power outage maps we can go to here. We have some outages starting to add up in Alabama, so let's see what's going on with that. We'll kind of dive deeper here with this. You can see Alabama now, 12,156 customers, but I expect these numbers to go up here in states like Georgia, Tennessee, South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia, West Virginia. You kind of get the idea as we're looking ahead here, areas that aren't as used to this. And now Alabama, let's see what county this is in or what zone. And actually have some in southeast Alabama on Coffee County. That wouldn't be from wintry weather. Maybe some of those winds, though, that we've been talking about here. Wind advisory in play. And you see some other outages to the north, maybe about the winds as well. I know there's been a high wind warning that's been in play as we're looking ahead toward the Atlanta area. So something they have to be watching here carefully. It's winter storm. All different patches here are so important to watch here on this Sunday morning. The severe side, the wintry side, the winds. I mean, we have the colder temperatures coming in as well. Just kind of telling that story here here with our mapping. Again, that severe threat going to be one to watch as we're looking ahead here later on this morning. We're going to be watching I-75 there as we're looking down toward west central Florida, maybe clipping some of our counties, maybe not, with the higher threat here with the instability values. As we look over the last hour, so you see the rainfall hadn't been as impressive here. Lightning not as impressive as it has been down toward areas off the coast of west central Florida. So they got to be watching things. Let's check on my notes here real quick. I think we pretty much covered everything we need to. I know we're at 58 where I'm at right now. Our wind maximum we've had 14 miles an hour. I know we had a really strong wind a couple weeks ago. Maybe not quite that bad as the wind that we saw a couple weeks ago here around on that backside of that severe weather maker, but it could be pretty similar in some regard. It's going to be a pretty windy day as we're looking ahead toward the timeline. So we've talked about a severe thunderstorm warning. We talked about a winter weather threat. Again, a severe thunderstorm warning drop. That's the good news. That Buccaneers game here later today. Going to be in toward the Tampa area. It's going to be pretty windy. Could affect the kicking game. I know the Seminole basketball team up in that cold air up toward western New York. Western New York here. You can see these temperatures 0 degrees up there, and that Buffalo Bills game really cold. These wind chills below 0, telling that story. I know in Ohio it's pretty cool for that Cincinnati playoff game as well. As we just got a mental scale discussing issues, so they're kind of seeing some things here as well. They're only going a 20% chance of a watch. So let's see what they're saying about this. Maybe there's some more limiting factors here than what I'm seeing. But the latest radar imagery from the Tampa area does show a line of storms extending to about 30 statute miles to the northwest of Tampa. The line of storms is located along a prefrontal surface trough. Again, kind of reading verbatim like we do here in our coverage, where that low-level convergence is maximized and surface dew points there ahead of the line along the west coast of Florida range from the upper 50s north of Tampa to the low to maybe mid-60s there south of Tampa. And this is contributing to the weak destabilization along the coast with the wrap showing those mixed layer Cape values near 250 joules per kilogram. In addition, the WSR 88D VWP is showing a strong wind profile with 0 to 6 kilometers shear near 70 knots. So that shear is there, as we've been talking about here. And this, along with the south wind near 50 knots just above the surface, should support a marginal wind damage threat as the line moves on shore over the next couple of hours. And the WSR 88D VWP, and we're getting really technical here. I apologize if you don't understand this, but I kind of want to do this sometimes because you wouldn't get this on a traditional television broadcast. But at Tampa, 0 to 1 kilometer storm relative helicity near 400 there. That's suggesting a brief tornado could also be possible. The air mass more stable inland away from the coast. So that could limit things as you get maybe into toward areas further east of central Florida. Granted, we could have that later on in the timeline there with a little bit of daytime heating trying to come into play, but more of a west coast of Florida thing like we've seen in the past here could be coming in play over the next few hours. So make sure people are weather aware here. This blue area that was drawn by the Storm Prediction Center alerting the Tampa office here. Homosassa Springs, Brooksville. Let me zoom out a little bit so we can kind of see this better. You see Homosassa Springs there, Newport Richie in here, Tampa, Bradenton. You get the idea. We'll go in a little tighter, make sure we're showing everything to you in our frame. Venice, Sarasota. You see there, it's further inland. You see St. Petersburg. You see Clearwater. Again, Newport Richie there under this. So Brooksville, Homosassa Springs as well. So gotta be watching this threat. If there's something that we need to break back in for in our local area, of course we'll do that here. Now, if it's a Central Florida, West Central Florida thing, maybe more about tweeting the latest information, and you'll want to follow those local meteorologists as well. If something really looks nasty, you might go ahead and break back in for it. But otherwise, thanks so much for tuning in and trusting me. If something ramps up in our area, we'll be here to keep you and your friends and your family safe.